Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and I'd like to welcome you to the FCPA Compliance Report. In this episode, I visited with Stephen Lofchie. Stephen is a partner at Cadwalader, Wickersham and Taft in the firm's New York office, and he and his team have developed a fabulous new resource called the Cadwalader Cabinet. The Cadwalader Cabinet is a one-stop shop for attorneys and regulators operating in the U.S. financial services sector. We talk about the creation of the Cadwalader Cabinet, what market need or opportunity did Stephen and his team see which fills it, what is in the Cadwalader Cabinet, and how you can check it out with a link through to the Cadwalader Cabinet and a free trial. This really is a fabulous resource that you should definitely check out. Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox back for another episode, and today we are going to talk to Stephen Lofchie. He is a partner at Cadwalader, Taft and Wickersham, and his firm and his team have created one of what I think is the top resources or go-to shop stops for attorneys and regulators in the U.S. financial services and really beyond. It's called the Cabinet. So, Stephen, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
No, I appreciate your getting the word out on the cabinet. I think it really is a unique resource, and we put tremendous effort into building it. And as I said, I appreciate you helping to get the word out about the benefits it can provide.
Stephen, I came to discover the cabinet. I got an unsolicited email. I checked you guys out. You put on a daily email with some selected topics, and it's frankly one of the ones I look forward to the most because the topics are interesting, fascinating, and frankly fun to read. So I was wondering if you might tell us sort of the genesis of the cabinet.
Well, that would be a very long story. I'm not sure we have enough time, but it started as actually a book, a hardcover book on regulation, and then I was approached after the book was written to put the book online. I worked with a number of online, legal technology firms, including I think Westlaw. Had the book up for a bit, Walter Kluwer, and I just found it very frustrating to work with them, and felt that it was possible for lawyers in a law firm who were really committed to being client friendly and weren't just, hey, a publishing firm, we're just taking words on a page and putting them online, that we could really do something better. And in fact, as technology has become easier to work with, I think it's become possible for a law firm to produce something that is really shows off, is really helpful to clients in a way that a technology firm or a publishing firm can't do. So, as I said, we made the transition from paper to going online, and from having lawyers be just kind of objects of a technology firm to saying, hey, let's do the technology ourselves.
The book you wrote really leads into my next series of questions. You are generally practicing the area of regulatory space, but I was wondering if you might be able to tell our listeners a little bit about your practice and that of your practice group.
Sure. So I began life, or at least legal life, as an expert in the regulation of investment banks or broker-dealers, and then gradually kind of built out from there to regulation of investment advisors, and then some exposure to the regulation of investment companies, and with the growth of derivatives into the Commodity Exchange Act. So the group that I work in is a very diverse group in terms of what we cover. Really all of financial regulation, whether it's banks, broker-dealers, CFTC registrants. And I think some of the approach that we take to the regulation is fairly, I wouldn't say unique, but certainly differentiating. Just as my practice is very broad and isn't just broker-dealers, it covers a range of registrants. I think almost everyone in the group works that way. And then I think another way in which the group, is different is that we're both regulatory and transactional lawyers. And so that gives you, again, a different approach to practicing of law. It's not just what the rules are, but hey, you got to get something done.
Steve and I do a lot of podcasts around innovation compliance, and innovation in business process. And I'm always intrigued by someone like yourself or your greater team for the cabinet who would see a market need or a market opportunity and move to fill that with a product or service. Could you tell us how the cabinet fills a market need or a market opportunity that you guys saw?
Well, I think the main thing is, and again, I really come at it, I'm going to say less as a businessman than as a practicing lawyer. So what I would say is it's less, okay, how much of a market need is there, as opposed to as a practicing lawyer, what is it that you need to work efficiently? And the way the world is going, a practicing lawyer needs to look at many different regulators. You need to look at the SEC, and then you need to look at FINRA or the MSRB, and as you get, then also the CFTC may have regulations. So you're looking at numerous different regulators as far as how they handle a single product, and to look at multiple sites, to go to this website of each regulator is tremendously time consuming, and regulators don't really present materials in a way that is efficient for the lawyer. If you go to Google, they have lots of documents, and you'll find a single document, but certainly Google is not in the business of presenting information that is cohesive and organized for a lawyer. And frankly, neither are the big, Lexis and Westlaw in that business. They have lots of documents presented in a relatively disorganized fashion. So what we're really trying to bring to this, which practicing lawyers and compliance people need, is organization, curation, relating documents. And that's what we perceived as the lawyer compliance person demand.
Stephen, the capabilities in the cabinet are really extraordinarily powerful, and I was frankly stunned when I got access and went through just to see some of the things that are available for the lawyer/practitioner. But I was wondering if you might be able to tell us a few of those capabilities.
Well, in a lot of ways, the most important thing is curation and organization and metadata. So, old-time legal practitioners will be, for example, familiar with Westlaw and the fact that Westlaw has a kind of keyword system. And the concept of the keyword system is actually a very useful one. Unfortunately, I think as a practical matter, Westlaw really hasn't been able to keep it up. They've got too many documents. Their metadata system started too long ago for them to maintain it as a vibrant system of search. So what we do is that we merge kind of a metadata word search system with what I'll say is kind of a Google word search system. So it's a very powerful system for finding what you're looking for. And then we present information in a different way. So rather than just pulling up individual documents, if you're searching for a concept like swaps or broker-dealer capital, we will put up everything on the screen, like not just a single document, will give you, really everything about that topic in a very cohesive fashion.
You've got things, but are really beyond that. So you've got a calendar, you've got alerts, you've got regulation change trackers. You really put information out there. But the other intriguing thing I found is your use of AI or deep learning. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So that's an interesting question. I'm always of the view that you know AI is somewhat oversold because much of what we're doing, I would describe as medium data rather than big data. So we've used machine learning to some extent in categorizing data, um, but only to an extent. I don't the size of the data pools and the documents that we're talking about, um, is more in the medium range, where I think machine learning is less efficient. So we use a lot of tools that we work somewhere between a combination of brute, individual force of looking at individual documents, and machine learning, and then try to use machine learning to some extent as supplementary to that. But I think, to a good extent in the legal world, machine learning, at least from a regulatory perspective, is somewhat more of a catchphrase, hey, we're doing this, than it is a reality. Um, so we have lots of clever tools that we use to categorize documents, not necessarily machine learning.
Breadth and scope of the cabinet is also one of the things that really struck me. We mentioned some of the things such as statutes and regulations, but you've got in-depth legal analysis. You have ongoing and current case law and reporting of recent decisions. You have text of speeches by key regulators from the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice. So I was wondering if you might give us a sense of the breadth and scope of the cabinet.
Well, again, this goes back to the question that you asked me before about market need. And I said, it's not what the market needs, it's what lawyers and compliance people need to do their job. And, statutes and rules are clearly insufficient. You really need to have everything that the regulators produce that is of interest to your topic. So, unlike a big technology firm, which is, worried about, hey, we need to have the divorce laws in Iowa, we're not concerned with that. We're trying to serve people, the financial industry professionals, and what they need is everything relevant to their practice, whether it's statutes, rules, no action letters, speeches. Where is the market going in terms of regulatory concern? When do the rules change? As you said, we have tools to track rule changes and event changes. So within the realm of financial regulation, really the idea is to have everything of any kind of materiality whatsoever, and not to be distracted by things that are irrelevant to our clients and to the day-to-day doings of their job, but to have a tool that can sit on people's desk and let them do their job in an efficient way. And part of that is within the scope of their job, they need to have everything that exists that is meaningful presented in an organized fashion.
We've talked a fair amount, at least in my mind, about federal regulation, but it's my understanding that the cabinet also includes rapidly added enforcement actions, relevant state laws. Would that be fair as well, Stephen?
So enforcement actions we are covering in tremendous detail. So when I first started as a regulatory lawyer who is primarily intent on keeping his clients out of enforcement, I really focused entirely on the regulatory aspect of this. As the cabinet grew, I came to realize more and more that, look, what gives the regulations meaning is the enforcement actions to a good extent. And so for the major regulators in the financial space, the SEC, FINRA, we have all of the enforcement actions, and we have them in a way, again, I think that is much more powerful than you can find on either the regulators' websites or on any other private site, in that we really try to organize them very specifically by what was the enforcement action about in terms of what was the violation, try to organize them by what type of entity the enforcement action was brought against, by how much the fine was, by whether the enforcement action was against an individual or a corporation. And we're trying to provide all kinds of ways to segment the enforcement data so that when a firm is in trouble, it kind of knows or has a call from a regulator. It might be able to look at how much previous fines have been, and specifically what they've been for. And similarly, on the state side, we're gradually growing our materials in those areas that are of significant to our membership base.
So I am most generally an FCPA compliance practitioner. So I, of course, data mine that site extensively, and it's just fabulous for the amount of resources. So if you're a FCPA or greater anti-corruption compliance practitioner, this resource really works for you. But that just scratches the surface, because it allows you to take a look at not only what the Department of Justice is looking at, but the Securities and Exchange Commission, and also a much broader remit of regulations.
To my point of, it's very cross-regulatory, that nobody can just be satisfied with looking at one regulator. So you've got to look at everything all the regulators do. But
no, that's I could not have written that any better. Cross-regulatory. Thank you. Stephen, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time, but I was wondering if our listeners wanted to check out the cabinet. How could they do so?
We'll go to www.findnodo.com. So it's three words: find, then know, KNOW, and then do.com. You can get a free subscription to the newsletter, and that will also direct you to where you can take a look at the cabinet generally, or you can just shoot me an email at stephen.lofchie@cwt.com. So thanks very much, Tom.
Stephen, this has been a great podcast for me, and I think our listeners are going to appreciate it. And I just want to, once again, on behalf of the entire compliance community, thank you guys, you, your team, and the firm for putting up this resource. It's one that I don't think is met by certainly any other law firm, and maybe not anywhere else. So we're going to link to the site and the free offer in the show notes. So, Stephen, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks very much. Glad to be back anytime you like.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox again. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode of the FCPA Compliance Report. In the show notes, we will link to the Cadwalader Cabinet. And best of all, if you reference this show when you go into the cabinet, you can get a 2-week free trial. I can't emphasize enough what a fabulous resource this is. It's something that I check out. Definitely sign up for the newsletter, and then check out the cabinet, because if you are in the financial services industry, if you're in the anti-corruption community, if you're in the AML, if you're in trade sanctions, this is a fabulous resource for you, and one that I think will become more significant going forward. I hope you will join me again next week for another episode of the FCPA Compliance Report. The FCPA Compliance Report is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks again for listening.